Hey everybody, it's CMY. We're here back for another episode. It's Marc, Yanil, and Christian. Uh, Christian, you just came back from a trip. I guess we should start talking about what your experience was on your trip. I know you told us a couple of cool things about the place you're staying that were quite interesting. Hopefully, you got some pictures of that to share. But we look forward to seeing it and hearing about that too. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, I'd say that we were pretty nervous. The whole COVID thing was flying was really risky, and it's too long of a drive from Miami to Wisconsin. So we decided to ask people that we knew that have flown and kind of just like do research into like the airlines. So usually we fly with American, but American isn't doing any sort of distancing between passengers. So that immediately took us over to Delta. So we ended up flying Delta. It was nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. We flew out of Fort Lauderdale. It was basically empty. There wasn't even a security line at all. The plane was only about 60 to 70% full, maybe. Uh, Cleanest plane I've ever seen. Which was, that immediately kind of just brought our comfort level up. My wife, being my wife, she brought Lysol wipes and wiped everything down before we sat down anyway. I think that's a Hispanic woman thing, maybe. I don't know.
now we did
So,
that on the way back from Puerto Rico, like right when everything broke. We were wiping stuff down. So maybe it's just
yeah,
a female thing.
My
yeah,
wife does
yeah.
it without any pandemic going on.
Oh, good. There you go. All right.
So we flew from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta, and we had a connection in Atlanta to fly to Milwaukee. Atlanta, I would say, being a huge hub, it wasn't as packed as you would imagine it would be, but it was definitely, there was a lot of people. So it's kind of hard to manage, like bobbing and weaving to kind of stay away from people. A lot of like under nose maskers. Um, I saw maybe like one or two people just like straight up not wearing a mask. They had it like on their chin. I'm so that was kind of disappointing, but realistically, the majority of what we saw was okay. I I'd say Milwaukee was completely dead, even deader than Fort Lauderdale, and that was on the way in and out. So that was great. Even like they don't even have like Starbucks open or anything. Like all the restaurants and stores within the airport are closed. It's just like get in, get out kind of thing, which I really liked. So the first part of our trip was we stayed at my uncle's house in the city of Milwaukee, and he lives in this really cool house that was built in the early 1800s. So it's actually a historical landmark. So when
Nice.
I got there, they were remodeling the outside. They had, the outside of the houses up there are a little bit different than houses in Florida. They're made out of wood, so they had found some wood rot and stuff. So they were replacing all that and painting the house. And it made for really interesting photos to like shoot that. It was almost like a work in progress kind of thing. The guys that he had working there were local Mexican workers that live in Milwaukee, and they were also really interesting to photograph. And they had like, I know it sounds weird, but they had the way they had like their ladders laid out, and like they were like really organized, and it just made for cool pictures. The light there is fantastic all the time. It's really strange. Like I couldn't believe how good the light was. Like at any point, if I could go out in the morning, it would be awesome. And then not just the light, but the weather was really, really great too. It was like in the 70s basically the whole time we were there, which is a great change from Miami's close to 100
Yeah, it was
plus
95
150
today.
plus 150% humidity. So I'm not really glad to be back from that. But the second phase of our trip was we drove up from Milwaukee about 4 hours north it's still on kind of like the east side of Wisconsin, and it's a place called Eagle River. It's pretty well known up there. A lot of people have cabins up there, like vacation cabins. So we rented one out, and from just kind of my uncle rented it from like some random guy that's a friend of his friend. And we get there and it was really beautiful. I mean, the landscape, the nature, it's kind of like really deep in the forest, which was amazing. The wildlife was amazing. A lot of deer everywhere, a lot of bald eagles everywhere. So the funny thing was, which is what we were talking about before we started, was that the house was like the decor of the actual house and the interior was the most Americana thing I think I've ever seen in my life. The carpet was blue, completely blue. The walls were white, but like speckled with red. And then everything else was either red or blue. So everything in the house was red, white, and blue. Everything. Everything. And there were eagles everywhere. There's one above like the main chimney in the family. The like up on the walls on above the wallpaper, they had like a strip of like just it was like little eagle stamps. There was an eagle at least in every room. It was kind of it. I don't know. At first, it was like I was like kind of like this is weird. This is like really really weird. But the more I stayed there, the more I realized how like well branded it was. I guess I don't know. It was just so deep. So the cabin was built 4 generations ago. So I would say maybe like late 1800s or early 1900s. And it really went well. It was kept so well too. That was the other surprising thing. You think all this like cheesy stuff everywhere was like old and musty, and it really wasn't. It was like really clean and it looked just kept so well. Everything was really organized. So I actually did which I've done before. I did some interior design shots, and I shot it as like I would shoot like one of my interior projects. And I took a lot of photos of outside and nature. We don't have a lot of woods down here in Miami. I love the woods. I love the forest. I love being in the forest. The light is always beautiful, and I love how like the light just flickers through the leaves, and with the contrast of the trees and stuff. And then that area is considered the North Woods of Wisconsin. And a lot of people, like I said, they have cabins and go hunting up there and fishing in the lakes. I think there's a chain of 26 lakes or 28 lakes. So it's pretty big. And the lake we stayed on was huge, called Catfish Lake. It was gorgeous. I had a great time. It was really relaxing. It was very quiet, and I was able to just kind of walk around every day and make photographs that just stood out to me. But with all that being said, I don't think that I made anything that was like really awe-inspiring, I guess. I think the coolest thing was at night we would go out on the dock, and since it's so far away from everything, I mean, there was some light pollution, but you could see all of the stars. And the days that we were there, it was a meteor shower for 3 days straight. So we would just sit out there and like watch the flying meteors or shooting stars or whatever we want to call them. And it would go on for hours and hours. Like I'm talking about like dozens of them. It was so cool, man. So I took some photos. I did my best at doing some astrophotography with kind of like the landscape of the lake and everything. And I did some night shots of the cabin. Yeah.
What did you do the Astro with? With the SL or with the
I should probably talk about like photography, right? I took my SL2, my M10, and my Q2.
lesser photographer?
Yeah, lesser photographer till the end. I took 50 Summicron SL to use on the SL. Obviously, the Q2 has a 28 on it. And on the M10, I took a 35 Summicron and a 90 Summarit. And I also took an old vintage Nikon F 24 millimeter 2.8. And that's what I started off the night stuff with. I don't know. I figured it'd be like the shots that I needed the least amount of like contrast and sharpness or whatever. I thought it would be kind of like give it like a cool vintagey look to shoot the stars like that. And it did. It worked out really well. I thought the lens performed amazing. I mean, it's a really clean copy. There's no dust or haze or fungus or anything like that. And then pretty much the rest of the trip, I used my Q2 in Milwaukee, but I used my M10 with the 35 on it and the 90 up in Eagle River. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the shots that I took up there taken with my M10.
And you also did a little bit of iPhone photography.
I took like 2 or 3 shots. One of them was on a bike ride that I didn't want to take any of my cameras on because they're just too big for that. So we went on a bike ride, like around the forest, like around the neighborhood. And I saw this really cool picture of a truck, just kind of like an old abandoned truck in the woods. And I didn't have a camera on me, so I had to take it with my phone. It hurt.
Then you had a camera on
you. A real camera, Yanni.
For real photographers.
Yeah, exactly. So overall, it was a fun trip. It was nice and relaxing, and I got some pretty cool photos. Nothing to write home about, though.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, to me, like everything that you just explained sound like the type of trip where it's, going back to our lesser photographer episode, right? Where it's like, it kind of doesn't matter, right? I mean, you weren't making those photographs for either a client or, any particular purpose. It was just for, the hobby of photography, if you will, like the joy of photography. So it kind of doesn't matter that the end result was not anything that's like, oh man, this is what's that term? The Instagram banger or whatever they call it, right? It's just, hey, whatever you saw something you liked, you took a picture and maybe pleased you at the time. You maybe never look at it again, or maybe you come across it later on and you're like, oh man, you remember this time we saw this cool thing? And, you kind of relive the memory through that picture. I mean, that's how I do it. So, I don't see a problem with it is what I'm saying. So that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, I think that I could definitely grab some content for my Instagram from some of the photos I made. But I just say, I don't know. I think it's because I go to Milwaukee every year or I go to Wisconsin every year that it kind of just feels like home away from home. And it's, how like when you live in a city, and I think we've discussed this before, but it's just a little bit less special than if you go traveling, like, outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's kind of like what happened. But my wife had never been up to a lake or up in the woods for that matter ever before. She's from Miami, born and raised. So, and
don't go in lakes. It's dangerous.
Got gators.
Yeah.
Tight. Gators, the bottom grass or whatever will grab you and pull you down. Like my mom scared the crap out of me for rivers and lakes. I'll never go in one in my life.
Just always
I went in. We played the first night we were there. We played a card game, and it was the guys against the girls, and the girls won. So all the guys had to jump in the lake at night, and the water was probably in the 50s. It was pretty cold, pretty cold. But during the day, it wasn't that bad. It was like the sun was out and stuff. So
that sounds nice. Like jumping into a lake without sharks that are going to kill your gators.
Yeah. I don't think there was actually anything harmful in that lake, unless a bald eagle came out from the sky and tried to pluck you up.
It's like a giant pterodactyl.
Dude, seriously, those things are so enormous. I think I've seen them before, but maybe kind of like further away. But I saw them like more up close this time, and they're just massive. Their wingspan is crazy.
Yeah, I've never seen one in person, but I've heard they're big. Just from TV shows my kids watch, but that's neither here nor there. But
that's what kids are for.
I was making fun of my wife. We did like the road trip around the Olympic Peninsula, like Pacific Northwest. And one of the stops, we just saw like a nice, like I think it was a river that we stopped just to take a photo at. And my wife sees a bald eagle flying by. She had never seen one. All of a sudden, I look over and I'm like, "Are you crying?"
Well, dude,
really emotional.
I'm gonna be real with you. So like the cabin that was next door to our cabin, or I guess like the closest one, had like a huge American flag, and the house itself was red. And we're just kind of like out on the dock, and I look up and there's this big eagle, and I look like immediately to my right, and I just see like the American flag like waving in the background with this like beautiful light on it, and I was just like, I almost teared up, man. It was
Awesome.
very American. It was really nice.
That's crazy.
So funny. Going back to like what we were talking about before about that you didn't really make any photos that you really loved or anything. But a lot of times when I travel, like I'll leave the trip and be like, damn, I don't really want to post any of this. And I won't. But I'll go back a couple of years later, like just reminiscing about the trip, and I'll see the photos. I'm like, that's a really good photo. Like I remember, like you look
That
back
totally
at it with new
happens.
eyes and you see it. It's like, that's a good photo. I remember that day and that was an amazing experience. And that makes the photo so much better. Just
Yeah.
because it's something that it's just not fresh in your mind anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my issue mainly with it was that I didn't feel like the photos that I made in Eagle River were very like unique from each other. It was just like a lot of trees, I guess. And like while I was there and like walking through the forest or whatever, it was really nice, and it like caught my eye, obviously, so I took a photo. But like after I kind of threw them into Lightroom and started looking at them, and I just felt like it was a lot of the same. So I don't know. I guess that was my issue with it.
Well, to take it, what Yanni's point was a little bit while ago too, is that, again, for me, when I do what he just mentioned, where I go through it later on and I'm like, oh, this was a cool photo. It's typically like a journey, right? So it's not just like the one photo by itself standing alone, right? It's typically, a series of photos that reminds me of like the trip and maybe the other photos I took that are probably even less significant, but like, all right, this might be one that I think is better out of this bunch, whether it's like, okay, the Grand Canyon is a perfect example, right? I actually recently went through a bunch of pictures that I took there and I was like, oh man, and I was like, I kind of just blew this one off because I figured it just wasn't that spectacular, right? It wasn't like the main part of the canyon. It was just this little part that I found. And I was like, all right, well, I kind of liked how the light was hitting it and everything. So seeing it now, I have more appreciation for it, not just because it by itself is a good photo, but when I, again, cycle through Lightroom, the days or whatever that is, the week that we're there, and reliving that through those pictures, I think that's part of the enjoyment, right? Again, it's not let me go post on Instagram and try to get likes, or let me go put in some kind of portfolio, but I still find enjoyment in the photo, right? And what it means for me, as, the person who was on the trip and as, a photographer, right? So I think that's the way to look at it and enjoy it, I guess.
So I guess what we can do is post a couple at the end of the video and you guys can tell us your thoughts. Like and comment on what you'd like to see talked about, and maybe things that weren't, these guys haven't seen the photos yet. I haven't even finished editing them yet, but I will. I'll probably finish them really soon, and we'll hopefully by the time this video airs, we can throw them at the end and hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah,
I don't know, probably be the first photos of Wisconsin that most people have ever seen.
People,
so
when I tell people that I'm from Wisconsin, they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like,
we still do.
What?
I still
do. No, you're not.
I've heard it like 3 times. I'm like,
yeah.
The first time you told me, I was like, oh, you're messing with me, right?
a lot of people think that, and a lot of people think that Milwaukee is just like farmland. They don't can't imagine it as a big city. It's weird.
Yeah, city in Milwaukee is like, what? Yeah, what?
Got a baseball team.
I was about to say they have a baseball team.
Cows and cheese in the city.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going on a trip too in about 2 weeks. Nothing fancy,
Nice.
Especially for Floridians. It's my wife and I's wedding anniversary, like the beginning of next month. So funny enough, since we've been married, every year we've actually had either she's been pregnant or there's a baby that has been with us. So it's the first time both the kids are old enough that we can get away. But obviously now there's COVID hanging around. So we're just going to go to Key West, go to a small place there. And just, again, no real expectations. I mean, photography aside, no expectations. We just need to get away. Right? I mean, we've been here in the house, locked down with them, so to speak, for the past 5 months. And, we just need to get away.
It gets to you, man.
Yeah.
It gets to you. That was the biggest reason that we decided to take the risk that we did. And there's definitely a part of me that feels guilty, because I strongly believe that everyone should be as careful as they can and wear a mask and really try to bring this thing down. But on a personal note, in a personal level, I just felt like mentally I really needed the break. I wasn't doing well before, so I feel much more refreshed and waiting for this to be over so work can start, and just kind of trying to focus on more positive things. I think for everybody, it got to be a really difficult, and it has gotten to be really difficult to get through this without a break at all.
Yeah. I mean, we're taking, so a couple of precautions or changes, right? I mean, for one, our wedding anniversary is actually Labor Day weekend. So, typically, it's an easy 4-day weekend to go do things. There's always places exciting, but we actually opted to do it before just because we wanted to kind of minimize the amount of people who'd be around.
Right.
So we were actually doing it the weekend before Labor Day weekend. So it worked out and everything. So that's where we're going to go to Key West. I forgot the name of the place we're staying, but quaint looking place. It's Key West. I mean, as Floridians here, like there's nothing particularly special for you guys who is Key West. It's probably going to be different because there's not going to be as many people, and it's going to be unique in that sense. But again, for me, I think it's just time away, right? Time away from like being in this house. I mean, for listeners, like I actually work at home like full time, that like there's no local office for me to even go into. So, when everybody was, having to work from home and stuff, I'm like, cool. I've been living this for the past like 10 years. So there's nothing to change for me. So I've had enough, like, where I'm just like, all right, I need to get out. Right. Cause usually that's what I do. Either take a trip every now and then, or, get out, shoot with you guys and stuff. But now it's just, that's been kind of shut down. So, what better opportunity than a wedding anniversary, right? Happy wife, happy life. So
absolutely. I mean, I think part of accepting the risk that we took too was where we were going. Like Milwaukee, I mean, obviously isn't nearly as bad as Florida or Wisconsin, I should say, in terms of COVID cases. But where we were going specifically in Wisconsin is just like so far, like it's so outdoorsy and like far away from everyone. We didn't really come into contact with anyone. We didn't need to. We had bought the food beforehand. We cooked every night, every day and every night. There wasn't a single time we went out to a restaurant or anything like that. Three of my cousins were there, and one of them has a son who's special needs. So obviously he was like high risk, and we just made sure to be as safe as possible for him.
Sweet. Like my in-laws have a house in the Keys in Alamorada, so usually I'm not like the biggest fan of going. Like I like going, but I don't like going that often. And now with COVID, I'm like, yeah, let's go again. And I've been, let's go out there, hang out in the pool, and just like do nothing. And it's one of those things where we leave the house, we drive to that house, we don't stop anywhere, have anything like to put gas, which that's all we do. Get to that house, and then I do not leave the perimeter of that house for like the entire weekend, and then come back home, and that's it. So it's like absolutely no contact, and it's pretty much the same thing as being home because I'm not seeing anybody but family.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is, right? It's really just a scenery change. Like, it's just you need to get out of the day in, day out that you're doing. And, that's a cliche, I think, statement that's made like, oh, I just want to change the scenery for people that do things. But when you really don't have much of a choice, at least not a safe choice, I think it's it's something you kind of yearn for. So.
Yani, what have you been up to?
I've been doing a lot of Marc style photography since I've been stuck at home and I'm not really shooting anything.
You're inspiring him, Marc.
I'm glad I had that effect
of my kid, and I will chase him around with 4 different cameras and take 4 of the same photos with 4 different cameras because I am that bored. It's like,
no, welcome to my life. Yeah.
Like I've been using this guy, my original X100, which put in the light. There we go.
It's too bad we aren't a review channel, because you could be putting all that stuff to the test.
Exactly. Like chasing after him, like, ooh, that one barely focuses. Ooh, this one focuses really good, but it's kind of boring to use. Oh, the GR is the best one, but it's so ugly. I don't like touching it.
Damn. You feel that way about the GR? Why? Because it's so small?
It's just ugly. It's nothing. It's
extremely utilitarian camera.
Overall, I think Nikon makes the ugliest cameras ever.
Like this, it looks like nothing. It's a black box with like a button on it.
I don't think it's a bad looking camera design wise.
there's nothing to it. Like,
Eh,
it's like,
yeah.
look at this thing, how nice it looks. Like,
No, no,
ooh,
no,
that's
no, no,
pretty.
no. I mean, this is pretty. Look
No,
at that.
that's already jumped a shark.
That is a pretty camera. Speaking of Fuji's, what's the status on? Are you going to be? Didn't you tell us you posted your M camera online for sale?
Wait. There you go. That thing. Yeah. So I'm selling my Leica M240. Final decide is like, well, whether or not I decide to go and get an M10P or M10 or whatever, the overlap between this guy, the X100, which I love using and love as a camera, and that's going to help me decide, right? Because if I get rid of that, I still have an M6. So if I really need to use a rangefinder, I'll, I guess, force myself to shoot more film anyway. And still have, a Leica. I mean, that means the lenses that I have will still have use.
Right.
But it will help me decide whether or not, like, okay, do I want to keep just the X100 or do I still need a digital Leica in my life? And, if I do, then, as we talked about, I don't remember if it was last episode or episode before, I really do want an M10, like don't need, want M10P, sorry. So, I figured sell it, sell that, which is weird. I never thought I'd actually sell that. And, at least I have the money. So if a good deal comes across on an M10 or M10P, I'll be ready because I have the money from this.
Right.
And if I decide, I don't really need it, I'll just stick to the M6, then sure, great. I save myself a bunch of money and it just sits there and, whatever, until the next obsession comes around.
Or you could buy more lenses for the Fuji or whatever.
Yeah, well, I don't think I will, but
you should try telephoto, man. Do you have anything like over 90?
Well, yeah. So what I'm recording on now is actually an XT3 with a 16-80, which is like a 24-120. I mean, it's an f4, typical kind of kit type lens.
Right.
So that's kind of like my utilitarian camera. It's like if I need to go to the zoo and like take pictures or go like on some safari or something. Well, I guess the safari probably needs something longer, but just anything that requires that kind of versatility, that's what I use. Otherwise, I really don't use it a whole lot, right? Because the X100 is just way smaller, easier, lighter, just have on me, chasing the kids around. That's the camera I typically use. So right now, that's my, again, utilitarian camera. The X100 is my, camera that like inspires me, so to speak, and then I have the M6, which is same thing, but film, which I try not to shoot too much because I figured just being at home is just going to be a huge waste the way I shoot, because I'd probably just snap off way too many photos. So that's actually what I intend to take to the Keys, is probably just the M6. I usually do that when I think it was last year when I went on my anniversary trip with my wife. I just took the M6. I did have the GR, but I shot mostly the M6 just because it's, again, we haven't gone to any place where I don't think I'll ever be back. So there's not this pressure of like, oh my God, let me get the best photos I can, on digital so I can share or archive it very quick. So it's way more relaxed shooting. So I figured it'd be best to take that to the Keys because, again, I've been to the Keys a ton of times and it's just down the road for us. So why not just shoot film where there's no pressure and it's not like, okay, let me shoot everything in sight because I'll never see it again, or because I want to capture all those things, So
I just finished watching, like right before we were recording, I was watching this episode of a Netflix show called Abstract. And to my understanding, it was only for like design, like architecture, design, that kind of thing, whatever. So I didn't really pay too much mind to it. And I was scrolling through YouTube and I see Netflix Abstract photography. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know they covered photography. So I click on it and it's about this photographer. His name is, hold on, let me see.
You told me Platon?
Platon, that's it. Yeah, Platon. Platon is a portrait photographer and he mostly shoots presidents, government officials, celebrities, but he's shot a lot of like Time magazine's person of the year, like portraits. Dude,
he didn't take my picture of Times person of the
year. That guy, he said some really interesting stuff, and one of them, and I'm saying this because you mentioned about shooting film and how it's more relaxed. He mentioned something in the documentary about like when you shoot film, you don't have a screen to like chimp or peep at. And when you're shooting film, you have more of a connection to the person that you're shooting, in this case because he shoots portraiture, but I can imagine it's the same if you shoot street or whatever else. You're kind of just more focused on what you're looking at instead of like what the camera is doing and looking at. And I thought that was a really interesting way. So I think that if you shoot digital, you can kind of imitate that in a way where it's just like turn off your back screen. I mean, with my SL and my Q2, like I have an EVF, so I'm looking at a screen either way. But like that's why I like to shoot my M10 and just kind of shoot it and pretend like there's no screen on the back. And I mean, if you have to use it, cool, but try to just keep in mind it's more so about your subject than the camera, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, on that same sort of topic, one of my favorite photographers from Florida, Clyde Butcher, he's like the Ansel Adams of Florida, basically. I don't know if you guys know him. He does a lot of work in the Everglades and stuff like that.
His work is incredible.
Yeah, and he was pretty much strictly film. And when I say film, I mean like the
Large
negatives
format.
are large formats. Like the film is bigger than your laptop.
Yeah.
And he has like a 2,000 pound and larger that I don't know I forgot where he got it from, but it's like he needs like a trucking company to bring it to him.
I think it's probably a drum scanner from that NASA made, right?
No, not a scanner. The larger to make
the
prints.
God.
Prints,
oh my God.
Yeah, like darkroom prints. And then, so I'm gonna ignore the fact that he got an A7R already, and we're gonna talk about the fact that he got a Leica monochrome. And it's like that's his. Apart from that A7 that we're not gonna talk about, this is his first digital camera. and he says that it's pretty much the same experience because it's monochrome, and since the Leica monochrome, it's an actual monochrome sensor. It's not the standard Bayer array that just desaturates. He could still, if you want to use like a different, like a filter on it to bring out the strength of the clouds or whatnot, he still has to use his own filter that he was using before. So it's the same process he was doing with film, just digital, so it could be a lot quicker. I doubt he's going to do his typical thing of taking his tripod and putting it like in the Everglades in the swamp where the camera's like sitting like right over the water. I doubt he's going to do that with the M10, but that would be interesting. But
that would be interesting. I mean, maybe he doesn't even have to put it on a tripod. I mean, he could probably just.
Well, he's doing like everything he does is like super long exposure and a bunch of filters on there and all that stuff. So, that guy's awesome. And that A7 that we're not going to talk about, it's actually a pretty cool setup. It's like the A7, and then it has like a bellows sort of thing where so it becomes a tilt shift. I don't even know what setup, but I'm like, hey. And I guess if you're going to use an A7, the best way to use it is in black and white, so you don't have that Sony color science stuff going on. That looks horrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Do you have some of his work up there to pull up?
Yeah. Give me 1 sec here. I'll get it up here. There you go. Yeah, his website's an eyeful. It's it's a little rough. Needs some work, but yeah. So this is Clyde Butcher. Let's see, photographs, Florida collection. There we go. So it does national parks.
Good, I can't wait
for black and white.
I can't wait to see his work that he does with the M10 monochrome.
Yeah, he actually.
I mean, not that this isn't incredible. Like this is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, for black and white landscape nature, like people think of nature and landscape, they think like lots of green and colors and stuff like that, and this is good.
It's so dramatic.
Yeah. The funny thing, and just to jump back to the Keys trip, like I was debating, I was like, all right, like always there's a decision. I was like, do I shoot black and white? Because I have a couple of rolls of Ilford HP5, or do I shoot color? Because that's kind of what I prefer. And I was like, I wonder what would, Florida, so to speak, look like in black and white, when I think it's just like general, like the area we're going to. I was like, that's interesting. I just kind of like had the thought, I was like, I wonder what that would look like. And again, it's not this kind of landscape, but just seeing the, I guess, tonality of the photos in black and white. And even these thumbnails here, as I'm looking through, it's like, that's crazy.
And just to nerd out, he shoots T-Max.
Oh. Which one? I'm assuming not 3200 or the 400?
No, it's 400. And
okay, there's
like 12 by 30 or whatever, like huge format.
12 by 30, Jesus.
I think that was the number I saw. I could be
insane.
I know there was a 12 in there.
There's a 12 in there. Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, this is so good, man.
Yeah. Damn, 89. Yeah, it'd be really cool. It looks like a lot of his work has spanned looks like decades. There's some photos in here that I saw. There's 83 and 89. I mean, there's stuff in the 2000s, 2016. It'd be really cool if he actually had similar shots, I guess, over the years from different areas, just to see, I guess, not to take it to like environmentalist type stuff, climate change stuff, but just, what the changes, how the landscape has changed over the years, and what that looks like, especially in such a dramatic fashion. I'm curious if he even has that already. Maybe he already does. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to the Dali Museum up in northern Florida. Where's that at Tampa, St. Augustine, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
is this
we went.
No, it's Tampa, isn't it?
I was about to say, isn't like Clearwater,
like
St. Pete, one of those places.
Yeah. And this was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. And they had a Clyde Butcher exhibit like the day that I went, and it was awesome. It was really,
nice.
really cool.
He looks like the guy from
Lord of the Rings.
No, not a lot of.
I mean, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah, right here. And just in that picture, it's like, holy crap. Yeah, that's crazy. That's
like
cool.
His work is, you could tell it's him. Like I remember I walked into somebody's office and they had a massive, like 9-foot wide print. And the second I saw him, like, that has to be Clyde Butcher. Like, it's something I'd never seen, but I looked at, like, instantly. I looked down, I'm like, oh, there it is. It's him. Because that dramatic Everglades, Florida look, that's his signature.
Yeah. The thing I like about it, I mean, maybe because it's film. I mean, I don't like it because it's film, but when I think about like what a dramatic landscape picture in black and white would look like in like a modern interpretation, I think of like something like gaudy HDR, like for some reason with like an ultra wide lens. That's kind of what I picture if I were to think about how somebody would interpret that. And seeing that, it's like, it doesn't look super exaggerated. The tonality is there. It's great, but it's not like HDR, like glowing. It's not like over. It just looks great.
It's real HDR. Crazy. It's huge format film.
Yeah.
You have all the dynamic range in the world.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah,
like really crazy.
It's really crazy. So
now I want to buy a print of his.
Back to this this guy we were just talking about, the portrait photographer. He was talking about how he has this, and this is also the reason I mentioned this earlier. He has a drum scanner because he said, and it was like designed by NASA or something. And he said that that's the only way, because he shoots film, the only way that he felt that he can get like the perfect grain structure and like the perfect tonality out of his images. And I thought that was really interesting. And they show like footage of it. Dude, it's massive. It's like, like those humongous like printers that they use like for billboards and stuff. It looks kind of like that. And then just like the drum roll just like spins so fast. It's cool. It's really cool. You guys should check it out.
There's a shop here in Miami that has one. I forgot where I think it's like somewhere in North Miami. Like there's an actual like scanning shop that nobody knows about. I've seen it like on Yelp. And one of the things they offer is a drum scanner.
Good.
But it's super expensive to drum scan things.
I can imagine.
I'm like, I'll just stick to my Epson.
I'll just stick to not shooting film.
Yeah, right.
I'll stick to shooting your camera.
Going back to like the M10, M10P, M6 discussion, that's the one thing that kind of scares me. It's like, I prefer color film, but I feel like doing it myself, I get very inconsistent results, both on the development and the scanning. So it's like, sometimes it's like a pain to work with, like the whole process to get what I want out of it. And, originally I thought, okay, great. I'll just shoot black and white on the M6 and then do color on the M240. And that's the one thing that like kind of like scares me about it, because sure, I could go send it off to lab and everything like that, but then it got stupid expensive very quickly if you start shooting a lot. So that's the one hesitation I have and fear, is that if I'm going to do color on it, which I probably will, do I start paying for it and just suck it up as a cost of like, enjoying that part of it, or keep trying to perfect it myself, or just say it and stick to black and white on that. So anyway, that is to be determined. But these are the things that go through my head.
We will return to this conversation at a later date.
Actually,
I want to hear what you do.
in that, have you ever considered, like, you don't know if your development or your scanning is the issue. Have you thought about sending your negatives to a professional lab to have scanned and see how they come back?
To just do the scanning?
Yeah.
Well, up until this discussion, I didn't know that was really a thing. Like, I didn't know that labs would just do that.
Some
So-
labs will just scan
Also,
for you.
I have some friends that just do, the lab just does the developing, and they do
Yeah,
scanning,
I've done that before.
It's like a lot
and
cheaper.
it's funny you mention that, because I do have, when I first started shooting film some years back, some negatives that I scanned with this new scanner, and I feel like I was able to manipulate it how I wanted it, but it still took work. So it could be in the scanning process. And I think, and that's why I said I'm open to trying some more. It's not like I'm just going to completely give up. I mean, say, all right, screw this. But I think it's a little bit of both, right? I know when I first started doing development at home for color, I think my temperatures were a little too hot just because I wanted to make sure it wasn't too cold. And I think that was causing my negatives to have like weird color shifts. So like some of the earlier stuff I developed was like really wacky with the colors, like really, really wacky. It's gotten a lot better now, where at least in a roll, I feel like, okay, once I figure out what's off or needs to be adjusted, it's just set it and forget and scan the entire roll that way.
Yeah.
But each roll might be different, right? Especially if you're talking different film stocks and so on. So, I mean, that's not a bad idea as far as like getting somebody else to scan it and see. But it's not an easy process. I mean, for me, at least with the process I have. So just for reference for anybody that wants to know, I use the, what's the name of the scanner again? It's boxed up somewhere. Plus-Tech, there you go. Plus-Tech, I think it was an 8100i or something like that, or 8100 SI, whatever, something. You can probably Google it and find it, or I'll put it in the show notes.
It's also really, really time consuming. Like, who has time to sit there and like scan every single negative? Like, that takes forever,
I mean, if you're doing like one roll, if you're developing like one roll and scanning one roll, it's not terrible. But the other day I did 6 rolls. I think it was like 2 black and white and like 4 color. And I'm not even going to lie, I still have like 3 rolls of color that I still haven't scanned from like a month ago from when I did that. So I actually thought about it this week. I was like, I got to find some time to sit down and finish scanning those, because I have no idea what's on it, because I just started shooting a bit of film like, during the whole, COVID thing. So it's probably nothing that important, but important in the sense of like nothing that's like I'm looking forward to like posting, but it's probably memories of like my kids and family and stuff like that, because that's all it really is. So.
Speaking of film and developing, we got our film back, the lost film.
Oh,
got scanned.
how'd it
was
come out?
recovered. I had one roll of portrait in there that I just shot like random things around like my life, and I love it, and I'm really angry about that because I don't want to keep on shooting portrait.
Yeah,
I want to go back to black and white film, but it's not even the price of the film; it's the price of everything else around the color film. As opposed to black and white. So I'm like, I was hoping I wouldn't like this, but I love them, and it's probably just because they are on film. I'm like, damn, it looks so nice. Like, but whatever. My wife got her photos back. She likes them all too. Our Minolta autocord or medium format might have a small hole on the shutter, because 3 of the photos have a like a light leak flare mark on the same exact spot. So I want to find somebody to send that out to. So the day after we got them back, I'm digging through a drawer, and I find the roll of exposed Portra 400. I'm like, what the hell? Where did this come from? I'm like, whatever. Maybe it's just like an old roll of film or something like that. Like a test roll or something I had. I'm like, hey, did you got your photos back, honey? She's like, well, now that you mentioned that, like the photos start from here. So we're missing like a day and a half of photos from before that. I'm like, oh, damn it. I have your roll here. I'm gonna have to. I keep on trying to be cheap about this, but now I gotta pay for shipping for this one roll all the way out to Utah, pay for shipping for the negatives back, and pay to
which lab is it? Which lab do you use again?
The Fine Lab.
I think it's better to just like whenever you're done with 5 rolls, send that out. Like no matter how fast you shoot it, if you shoot it over vacation.
This roll is from
just
December.
Send the whole thing out immediately.
That's December.
That's the problem.
Yeah, procrastinating on film is just never a good idea, because
it's 8 months older. You have to get it done.
Thing is, he procrastinates on shooting it too. That's the thing. It's like he doesn't go through it and just sit on it. It takes him a while to go through that roll.
Yeah, but I meant like, like keep it in bunches where it's like, oh, if it's you go on vacation, you shoot film, like send those vacation rolls out,
Yeah. Oh,
This
seriously,
one
yeah.
fell out of the bunch.
Yeah. I've actually been purposely not putting film in my camera because I know sometimes I have this like little burst of inspiration. I'm like, I'm going to shoot some film today, and I may fire off like five frames, and not touching it for like 6 months.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not hurting anything there, but it's like, all right, well, if I decide if this, let's say that was like a black and white roll, and I wanted to all of a sudden shoot colors, like, God damn it, now I like have to go finish this roll. So sometimes I anxiously blow through a roll. I mean, I do have some point and shoot film cameras that I guess I could throw in stuff if I want to shoot color, which I should mention that. So I have a bit of gear talk here. The Nikon L35 AF. That's a really freaking great camera. Like some of the pictures that come out of that thing, I'm like, wow, this is some of the best film photos I've ever taken. And it's just a point and shoot like with a gimpy autofocus. Like it's one of those things where in the viewfinder, when you look through it, it has like, a little like stick figure, like a tree, and then like a mountain to show you what's in focus. That's how you know you're in focus. Like, okay, yeah, person is close up, right? And a tree is like a landscape, and then not landscape, but whatever. And then mountain is like, yeah, that's out there. So, but it's a great little camera. It's actually got some great photos, and for film, it's really convenient. The lens is sharp. It's it's good. I like it.
I do the same thing with my mini Lux, where I just put in a roll and I'll take a couple of shots and then like won't look at it again for 3 months and then pick it up again in 3 months and shoot another 5 frames. And by the end, the year's end, I have a whole roll, just one roll. It's just like random stuff throughout the year.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you never when you want to switch, you never just take the roll out and then load it back in later at some other time?
I did that once when I know I had like 2 or 3 photos in, because it was easier to figure out where I need to get back to. Like it was like, basically skip a couple frames or something, but I'm not good at doing that. And it's funny you mention that. One of the roles I developed like earlier in the month that I was talking about, like, I guess I put it back in and didn't realize I already had shot it. And
got some double exposures.
Like the whole roll is double exposures. Like I'm not even kidding.
The whole though. Like if any of them actually look decent, that'd be kind of
one
cool.
did, except the orientation was all jacked up. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, let's say a picture of my wife, like with one of the kids, and like the other kid was like playing. Like if it was actually the same orientation, it would have been freaking phenomenal. Because I scanned it, I'm like, holy crap! And I'm like, but it's like my wife's like right side up, and then like the other kid's like this, so it just looks like crazy.
But what if you make that like a square? You know what I mean? Or like a bigger frame.
Yeah.
So like
I didn't throw it out, but I just kind of skipped
cool.
over it, right? I skipped over because I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of a bummer, right? The whole thing's in there, and so I scanned the rolls that are actually fine, and I'll go back to that one. That's actually one of the ones that I have to finish up scanning. So happy mistakes, right?
Happy mistakes always.
Yeah.
Like all of my rolls, all my scans come back with a bunch of black frames because my wife and I share the film cameras, and like Mark said, I could take a year to shoot one roll. So I'll put a roll in, take a few photos, and we go on a trip. She wants to use it. All right, let me pull out my roll, come back, put it back in, load it back up. Like, let's say I already had 6 frames on it. I'll like just cock the shutter like 8 times to like the 8th frame to make sure I don't double expose anything. I'll take like 3 or 4 more photos. Then we go on another trip. It's like, all right, let me take my film back out, load her film up, come back from the trip.
That's crazy, dude. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
And they just keep on putting in the
I feel like that's an easy way to like mess up your roll.
It hasn't happened yet.
It's more wasteful. It's just more wasteful because you kind of have to.
Right. You skip frames.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the roll is just, there's not like dedicated, okay, here's frame 1, right? So you could theoretically like load it in just a little too short or too long, like, in the theater where you just, and, completely miss it. And that's why Yani said like, give it like a 2-frame gap or 2-frame buffer, whatever you want to call it. So.
Like, I'm guessing if I use the same camera for decades, I would know how to do it perfectly. But for now, like a few extra frames is fine.
Right.
And it's less stuff to scan at the end.
Yeah.
See, that's why you guys need to just have your own cameras and just like, that's yours. And this is my roll, my camera, and we leave it alone.
I'm with Mark on this.
There's a reason I have Leicas, and it's because my wife likes them too. If only one of us liked them, I would still be shooting Fuji.
Oh God. Yeah. That's exactly.
A good point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that guy needs to go. So and if anybody's interested,
He
black
gives a
paint
discount to
like
listeners.
yeah, like a black paint like an M240. It's treated me well. I really, if it doesn't sell, to be honest with you, like who
You won't be
cares? Like
mad.
it's not.
It'll sell,
It,
man. Leica's always
yeah, no,
sell.
it will sell. I mean, but it's
I
just
don't think
one
I've
of those
ever
things
seen.
where.
Sorry, I don't think I've
No,
ever
no, go
seen
ahead.
a Leica online, like posted online for sale that hasn't sold.
Yeah.
Unless it's like some ridiculous price or some ridiculous limited edition or something. But like a
That's true.
regular, like a 240, M10, M6, M2, whatever, like they always sell.
What
Like
about M5s?
those never sell because nobody wants those except me. So I'll take one at like $200 or $300 if anyone's got one.
Yeah. If you want to get rid of that ugly thing, we have somebody. We have a taker. So. But yeah, hit us up. You can DM me on Instagram or message us on, I guess, YouTube or wherever you're getting this. Yeah, if you're interested, let me know. I mean, I'm not trying to peddle my wares on you, but I'm trying to peddle my wares on you. So you can help me decide what I'm going to do with my photography life for the next couple months until I change my mind again.
Follow us on Instagram too. It's at cmy.cast.
And I want to give a little shout out to my buddy. There's a shirt from Brickle Bikes. My friend Robbie. If you people follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I've been getting back into cycling a lot recently. And he's actually one of my best friends, and he has been getting into photography. He has my wife's old Olympus EM5. He bought another Panasonic or something. But he's one of those people that he's actually taken my advice. I've helped him out like for the shop. He's photographing the bike in good light using a tripod and just updating his feed and posting new and new photos. And he's been getting a bigger and bigger following. I think he might have more followers than me now because I used to make fun of him for that. And every day his business is growing from this. I'm like, this is awesome because just from caring a little bit. So I want to give him a shout out. He's at Brickle Bikes. If you need a bike, hit him up. He's a little bit busy now because everybody wants to ride a bike in the pandemic, but still.
So is this what happens when you take Yanni's advice? Or maybe I should just stop.
Some people, every now and then, people listen to me, and it's amazing.
You'd have an M10 already if you listened to him.
Yeah, I don't know now. I mean, he hasn't officially co-signed me selling this, I think, but we'll see. But I have one shout out to. I mean, I guess it's not so much a shout out because I don't know the guy, but I just picked up this book by Devin Allen. I think his Instagram's like at BYDVNALN, like basically by Devin Allen without the vowels in it. I haven't looked through it yet, but I've seen his work, and he actually he's a recently, I don't know what's the word, if you call it sponsored or whatever, like a photographer. So Leica brought him on board, and basically has him and a couple of the photographers on board now. So I thought that was really cool for them to acknowledge somebody who's been actually documenting some of the protests and just life in that kind of world, right? And the struggles that are happening there. I mean, he's been doing this since Freddie Gray's killing back in 2015. So I thought that was really cool. So wanted to show support, pick up the book. Like I said, I'll make some time to look through it. I typically don't rush to look through a book because it's hard to find a quiet time just to like absorb what's going on and take it in. So I got it yesterday, and it's I just unwrapped it and had it there to my shelf. So
I might pick that up too. That looks really good.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow. So yeah, really cool. Like I said, I flipped through it a bit. It looks interesting, and like I said, I follow him on Instagram already. But yeah, I think that was really cool. So picked up the book. That's my one, I guess, call out or shout out today.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we're going to link, I want to link that abstract episode, Mark, if you can.
Yeah, definitely.
If we can add some of the photos from my Wisconsin trip and see what you guys think, hit like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We're CMY.
Cool.
Later, guys.
Later, guys.
Later.